Just over my shoulder is the Garden of Gethsemane, at the base of the Mount of Olives, right here. In the ancient Hebrew world, olive oil was super valuable. It was one of the reasons that Rome wanted to occupy this area. Jesus came here after sharing the Last Supper with his disciples, after washing their feet. Jesus came here with three of his friends, Peter, James, and John. And he asked them to wait behind while he went a bit further ahead to pray among the olive trees. You know, I think it's interesting that this is where Jesus came to pray as he faced the coming moments, the suffering, the death, sitting among these olive trees, because Jesus would not only have been familiar with how valuable olive oil is, he was also familiar with the process by which it was made. You know, through pressing, through pressure, valuable things can happen. This process for making olive oil, it's a multi-step process. The first part required the mashing up of olives using something called a millstone. It's just a gigantic stone, hundreds of pounds, and it would be used to crush the olives, to break the skin of the olives, and to eventually grind it into a paste. That paste would then be put into bags, either made of animal hair or fine thread, and then laid those bags on an olive press. The bags would act as sort of a filter in the process. And then they would take a stone, again, across the olive paste, and they would press out the olive oil. This was the first oil, the virgin olive oil. And in ancient Hebrew culture, it was this first pressed oil that would be used in the temple for sacred, holy ceremonies, to anoint leaders, to anoint priests, to anoint kings. After collecting the first pressed olive oil, more weight was added. And there would be a second pressing, and that oil would have a yellow hue to it. And this would have been the oil people would use in their everyday lives for baking, for nourishment, for lighting of lamps, for healing. They would rub it on their skin. This was the oil that was used every day in the life of every person. And after that second pressed oil, there was a third. More weight was added. This time, the oil would not be clear, it wouldn't be yellow, but that third press, it would produce a deep red oil. This oil came from the pits of the olives. And as that red liquid poured down the side of the basin, it would be collected in the bottom. And this oil contained a special lye. And the people would allow it to congeal, and they would use this oil to make soap for cleansing. So it's interesting to me that this is the place where Jesus came to pray, the Garden of Gethsemane. The name comes from two Hebrew words, geth, which is the pressing, and shem, the oil, the place of pressing. Where there is pressing and pressure, great value can come forth. Jesus had come to Jerusalem, the place of his pressing. He had come as the anointed king riding on a donkey. He had nourished and sustained his disciples in the Last Supper, sort of that second oil, the breaking of the bread together. And now Jesus is experiencing the third pressing, a moment that Scripture tells us was heavy, was so filled with stress and pressure that he began to sweat blood, a medical condition called hematidrosis. It's extreme, but it makes sense. Look at what he was facing. Jesus that was facing the betrayal of one of his close friends, an arrest, mocking by some of the same people who had called him king just days before, beatings, scourging. The Father turned his face from him as he hangs on a cross to carry and cleanse the sin of the world. He begged God as he prayed, Father, take this cup from me. But ultimately he submitted to the plan of God, the perfect, good God with a plan of salvation for all of us. I'm standing here among these olive trees considering the weight of the pressing of Jesus. Jesus, the anointed King. Jesus, the light of the world, the bread of life. Jesus, whose blood cleanses us